Hi, I'm Yulia, and this is Burning Questions. And the topic that set the internet on fire this week is what does peace look on Trump's and Russia's terms? And today we're going to be discussing it with someone who has gone through Russian peace and Russian occupation.
I'm Rick
Topic.
the Ukrainian, full name Yaroslav. I was born in Makiivka, Donetsk Oblast. I also lived in occupation there. Now I am a volunteer raising funds for Ukrainian army. Um, that's my primary job actually these days. And I'm a YouTuber. I also take interviews from soldiers, mostly volunteers, Ukrainian volunteers, activists, and I try to bring the stories of Ukrainians to all the world. And my style is chill. I usually am not acting professionally. We make jokes. We are laughing, smiling, and it is all usually very chill and I said that word again, right? I wanted to say informal, yes.
Yeah, but it's the best way to do it. I actually was just I went to an event yesterday, and the one of the heads of Suspilna was there, and one of the points of discussion was why regular media or legacy media is losing the fight to bloggers. And it's sort of like, in some way, it's interesting, and in some way, it's dangerous because there are lots of bloggers that are not trained journalists that spread misinformation simply because they don't fact check or verify. And they were
Mhm.
like, how do we fight this? And I'm like, it's simple. No one wants to read something that looks down on you, because
Yeah.
legacy media normally is like very proper and very sort of like New York Timesy, right? But what people want is they want a journalist to like curse in their writing, and they want a journalist, like, you can still fact check, you can still be professional, but you want to have a conversation with a peer, not with like someone who's so above you.
Yeah.
So yeah. But yeah, today we're going to talk a little bit about, Trump and Putin's peace plan for Ukraine, which is basically capitulation of Ukraine and also reparations in the form of rare earth minerals to the United States for some reason.
Yep.
And after a bunch of different after a bunch of things that came out of the Trump administration actually this morning, which is Maxar being shut off for Ukraine. So Ukraine no longer has access to satellite imaging, not only classified, but also unclassified, so
Yeah.
free access. It is very, very evident that Trump is not doing this in order to achieve peace. He's doing it in
Yep.
order to achieve the best case scenario for Russia. So, since
Yep.
you've lived under Russian peace, what does peace on Russia's and Trump's terms
Yeah,
look
don't
like
forget to
for
put
Ukraine?
brackets there.
Air
Oh,
quotes.
quotations, yeah. Okay, so occupation, Russian occupation, how does it look? You first, basically, you don't have any rights as a citizen, and all the government there, so-called government, is just mafia. It's basically a set of gangs who will make you do what they want, and they want to take most of the profits from any of your businesses. Which now, or you gotta be really loyal. You gotta always pay the how you call that thing? Dань in English. Do you know
Um,
that?
pay the well, I would just say pay a percentage, pay a fee.
Well, a percentage, a fee, yeah, but that one, guys, it's basically dealing with mafia. A lot of you in the world know what it is. And Russia is a mafia state. It's not only a terrorist state, but also a mafia state. But I think terrorist state is like the worst kind of mafia, right? Because terrorists will just use terror against you, and they will use any methods. Mafia does that too. Okay, whatever. It doesn't matter much. But what you have there as a citizen, first, you have the lack of all the products, because when occupation happened in 2014, everything disappeared. Good quality food, and to be honest, it was not even bad quality food there. There was a total deficit of the food in the beginning of the first invasion in 2014. We could not afford to buy clothes because like most of the businesses, 80 to 90% of them closed, and people could not even go buy groceries or clothes there now because like no one wanted to work at a very dangerous place, and the danger was not only coming from bullets and shells and bombs. It was coming from the total chaos and those gangs. They were just coming to your place, to your store or shop, and they were saying, it's ours now. We own you, and we kind of we're taking it. Get out of here. So they didn't even want that person to work for them. They just took everything and put someone else as a manager or as an owner, and they were taking the owner of the business to the basement and making them sign the selling papers and not really given any money for the deal. So that was done under torture often, because not all people were willing to just sign off all their business to some goons. Now, this is why they were tortured, they were pressured badly, and now this is why most of the businesses who avoided that fate, they decided to just shut the business down and escape. Big part of Ukrainian population in Donetsk Oblast and Luhansk Oblast, also in Crimea, just left. Some to Ukraine, some unfortunately left to Russia, because not all realized that Russia is actually causing all of that, and they're just going from one trap to another. And Russia was always very good at their propaganda. Let me actually tell you, if you don't have any questions, follow-up questions about this part, because I have so much to tell you about the occupation and life in it, and so-called peace in it. But maybe you have some questions here, Yulia?
Oh, well, I just wanted to sort of, for you to clarify that you were born in Makiivka, Donetsk Oblast, that's where you lived, and that's where you experienced occupation from 2014 and on. Can you tell me what that looked like before it officially became occupation? Like how did it sort of come from it being Ukraine to it now being Russian rule?
First of all, I want to tell you how prosperous was Donbass, how prosperous was Donetsk and Makiivka in general. Like, I cannot tell you much about Luhansk, because Luhansk, I traveled there just once or twice and was just passing by, so I don't know much about Luhansk. But I know about Donetsk, and I know that Donetsk was at the same level of prosperity as Kyiv back in the days. In 2012, 2013, it was very prosperous. We had everything there. Best entertainment, best infrastructure. Well, maybe not the best, but very good. You always have somewhere to strive, especially comparing it to some European countries who achieved a lot because they did not have Russian occupation and lived in peace for decades, and they had the chance to do so. But we really loved Donetsk, and we were, though constantly, now I look back and I see that constantly we were brainwashed by Russian propaganda. I don't like to use that word, but I see what, it was everywhere. Like, it's also a Soviet legacy, unfortunately. It's not just that part that Russia was doing it proper, or not properly, but proper propaganda from Russia. But they were also doing it цілеспрямовано. Can you help me with the word here?
They were doing it, oh my gosh, deliberately.
How?
Deliberately.
Deliberately, yes. So it was an intentional strategy of theirs to affect all the medias through the oligarchs, through the deputies there, affect even the governmental structure, and they were trying to convince us that Donetsk, and it comes from 90s actually. There were strikes of mining facilities and miners who were convinced by Russia that Donbass is feeding all Ukraine, and Ukraine is ungrateful, and they kind of need to separate. So those separatist movements, they were fed by Russian special services like FSB or GRU from the 90s, and it was a strategy. It was not something that was appearing naturally, because to be honest, I've seen prosperity there. I did not see that Ukraine was profiting from Donetsk. It even feels like Donetsk was profiting from the rest of Ukraine, because back then I went to Kiev. I remember I was going to Kiev, and I've seen that in Kiev it's not that much better, and even at some aspects it's better in Donetsk than in Kiev. But your question was maybe of how it started, or where do you want me to go from here, Yulia?
Well, I think I want people to understand how like Russia is looming, right? Because Russia said that it didn't occupy Donetsk; it just brought peace to Donetsk region that was like, I don't know, invaded and attacked by Ukrainian Nazis. But even if not, like, it brought peace to Donetsk region. So, how did this peace come about? And what were you subjected to if you were not interested in having Russian peace in your home?
What I can tell you, it was all totally made up, because, well, one of the narratives that Russians were pushing is that Maidan happened, and, some politicians were usurping the, power in Kyiv, right? And they were not agree with that. Donetsk people were not agree with that. But the problem is Donetsk people were agreeing with that. And there was a big Ukrainian meeting right after Maidan. Meetings, not one, a few meetings were happening in Donetsk on the Lenina Square. That's the central one. And there were thousands of people there waving Ukrainian flags, and they were actually saying that Donetsk is Ukraine and that we need to stay with Ukraine. And that was a peaceful protest. The problem was that Russians started doing some really heavy clashes there. They started provoking and beating up the protesters, and first protester was killed. I don't remember the date exactly, but if I'm not mistaken, it was February or March 2014. First protester was who was killed was pro-Ukrainian. Russians were bringing their titushkas. That name was I don't know where it was coming from, but there were the guys who were paid to go and beat up the peaceful protesters. And they were brought on the buses, and you could see that they are geared up with some semi-weapons like, how do you call kostet in English? Do you know? The metal.
I keep forgetting the name of this thing, but I know what you're talking about. It's like these, like a big metal ring sort of thing that goes on all of your
on
fingers.
all of your fingers, yeah.
Yeah.
And you hit with it.
Please remind me, because this word is skipping my brain right now.
They had those. They had some chains. They were equipped to do some physical damage to people. And pro-Ukrainian protesters, they did not want that violence. And since it was a peaceful protest, unfortunately, they were not ready to cause the violence and oppose those protesters. This is why, unfortunately, the peaceful protests were suppressed. Well, not that quickly, but yeah, it happened, in my opinion, how I feel it, in a month or so. And unfortunately, violence prevailed there. Russian violence prevailed as it was trying to prevail on Maidan in February 2014, and they started just capturing different governmental buildings like city halls and police departments, SBU departments, and unfortunately, due to corruption, which Russia is actively using always, some of the policemen and governmental workers, they were actually collaborating with Russians, and they they wanted also something for them, and they also, yeah, due to that collaboration, it was easier for them to capture some of the buildings because there was no real resistance there. Yes, and we, the simple citizens, as I was, unfortunately, I was just a citizen who thought back then that we are, small people, just like Russians say. We are small people, we cannot influence that. The fact that I was not joining any resistance, and most of the people didn't do that. And with those who started doing that, unfortunately, they were brought to the basement, as Russians were saying. They were just taken into those basements and the newly formed concentration camps, like in the isolation torture camp. In the book of Stanislav Vaseyev, it is called the torture camp on the Paradise Street. That's the name of the book, and that torture camp still functions, and for 11 years people are being tortured there constantly, and they are being tortured to death often and killed there, obviously. So if you were showing your position openly, pro-Ukrainian position, and actually it's so ridiculous when we talk about having pro-Ukrainian position in Ukraine, right?
But also, what does a pro-Ukrainian position mean? Because I know for a fact that it's not like you standing on the street and carrying a Ukrainian flag. What do Russians consider to be a pro-Ukrainian position?
They would consider it as such if you're just wearing a Ukrainian flag ribbon somewhere on your backpack. If you were seen on the street with that, some goons may approach you, and they would start asking you questions. They would then just take you and throw you into some van and put you there on the basement. And they started forming block posts, roadblocks everywhere in the city, like in the middle of the city, in the ends of the city. All the roads started being blocked, and they started asking you to show them the documents. And you're driving on the bus. The bus has been stopped there. They are getting inside and going one by one, asking you to show the documents. And if they see that ribbon somewhere, Ukrainian ribbon, on your clothes or backpack, they start asking questions, and they can get you out of the bus, and it can continue like that. So you needed not to show any symbolics. You also needed to delete all the flags, photos of the flags, and also coat of arm, Ukrainian coat of arm, from your phone. You should start hiding your Ukrainian position. And you basically you needed to hide also talking about that you have that views, values, that you don't like what you see there. This is also speaking about that, when they start asking you and why do you have here, and you start saying to them that, what, I don't want you here, I want Ukraine here as it was, and I don't want any Russian so-called world and peace. It's not a peace, guys. Unfortunately, well, I'm saying guys when I'm addressing viewers, because Russia brought their war, and it was Russia because, unfortunately, Russian forces were there. We also seen them on the roadblocks. We could actually differentiate them from the local goons that were presenting themselves as ополчение. I don't know how to translate that word.
Oh, well, they're militia.
The militia, yeah. So we've seen Russian soldiers among them. They were dressed differently. They were equipped differently. They never had Russian flag there, but they were among them. There was always on the roadblocks, there was always one of them who was Russian. You could tell. Russian forces were there. They were masking, they were not disclosing themselves, but you could see them. You could also hear the accent. The Russian accent is totally different from the Donetsk Oblast accent. You could always tell. They also use different slang words and dialect words. We have interesting dialect there in the Donetsk Oblast. It has to do something with mining, and also, unfortunately, criminal culture is in it, but that's the Soviet times legacy also. Yeah, Yulia, let's finish with this aspect. What else do you want me to tell you? What you're interested in?
Well, I mean, I see this. It's like so hard to talk about this subject in terms of like what's happening now, because I feel like a lot of people are going to say, oh, but the peace deal doesn't mean Russian occupation, right? Like it doesn't mean that Russia is going to come to your to Kyiv or to other places. But the thing is, a peace deal and not letting Ukraine see satellite images, taking weapons away from Ukraine, forcing Ukraine to be defenseless, does open a roadway for Russia to continue invading. And as we see, if Russia just cared about NATO and Ukraine's accession to NATO, then Trump point blank said that Ukraine has zero chances of getting into NATO. So wouldn't Russia now just withdraw its troops? But it isn't doing that. It keeps fighting for territory because
Yeah.
it wants more territory.
Yulia,
So
and what about the territories that have been occupied in 2022, 2023? My favorite town in the whole Ukraine, Berdyansk, is occupied right now, and I know that people are waiting for Ukraine. They don't want that occupation. So, guys, peace, that so-called peace that comes from the peace deal of Trump, is is actually leaving those people in occupation. Do you want to deny that those people live in occupation? What the fuck? Like, this is the next step of the occupation. First one happened in 2014, Crimea, Donetsk Oblast, Luhansk Oblast. Then they started occupying Zaporizhia Oblast, Kherson Oblast. All those people, and unfortunately, there are millions of people, guys. I think, Yulia, how many do you think are there? I think around at least 4 million people are on those territories. It feels like that.
well, now I don't know because a lot of people moved, right? A lot of people died. A lot of people are missing in action or like just, not found. A lot of people sort of went to Russia. And the thing is, like, so here is what I suppose a lot of foreigners misunderstand is that when Ukrainians flee to Russia, it's not necessarily because they want to flee to Russia. It's because in a lot of cases, you're not allowed to go to Ukraine. You're risking your life trying to cross that border. But these territories that Russia occupies, they're basically like open air concentration camps. You don't get food, you don't get proper medicine, you don't get doctors, you don't get proper teachers. People that
Yes.
are alcoholics and drug addicts basically are assigned to be the minister of education, the minister of this, the minister of that, which is kind of funny because that's what's happening in the US right now, which is very Russian playbook as well. But
Yeah.
but worse, as in like your local hooker, like your local hooker is going to be assigned to be the
Literally.
minister of education, like literally. I mean,
Yeah.
genuinely. So in these territories, you have no jobs, and the infrastructure is not being taken care of. So if there are like potholes on the road, no one's going to fix them.
Let me give you the example of that, actually. In occupation, I lived there since 2014 until 2019. First of all, the situation with water, and it's an important part of infrastructure. The tap water, guys. First, we had it twice a day for 3 hours. And we got used to it. But like humans get used to everything. And I experienced that personally. I had water only 3 hours or 4 hours in the morning from, let's say, 6 to 10. Yeah, usually it was something like that. And in the evening from 6 to 10. And I needed to do all the washing and stuff on that period. Then in 2022, my most of my relatives left, but my grandma stayed there. And the situation got much worse. They started giving water to people only once per 2 days, first for 2 hours, then once per 4 days, and then, if I'm not mistaken, the last situation was once per 5 days. Can you imagine having tap water only once per 5 days.
So right now, actually, there are quite a few like Russian propagandists that live in Donetsk, and they like talk about the water situation, and they're like, "Oh, it's really not that bad. Like, water is like it's okay." I mean, like they literally show you yellow water that comes out, or like
Hmm.
orange rusty
The
water that
quality
comes out.
also of it
Yeah.
is
And
terrible.
then they show how you just need to be inventive and smart. And then they basically show how they make these like makeshift showers out of plastic bottles, and they just buy water in like gallons, and they use that as a shower. And they're trying to spin it as a positive thing, that you're only seeing it as a negative if you're stupid and you don't know how to get out of the situation. And it's like you have like Donetsk at this point, I don't think has clean water supplies like ever. I don't think it's once a
Yeah,
week. I don't think it's once a 5 days. I think they just don't have it. The only water that comes out of your shower is orange,
yeah,
like
yeah,
literally Trump's face orange, you know.
yeah.
And
And sometimes even darker. I would say
yeah,
like the brown lines of Vladimir Putin,
yeah,
that dark. Also you mentioned medication. There's always a huge deficit of important medication, like for diabetes, for people with cancer. Unfortunately, you cannot get any of that on the occupied territories. Sanctions in Russia make it impossible. And they always keep those territories, occupied territories, as the lower priority, and they want it to be. They don't care about those people much, and they just don't supply. And you go to the pharmacy, you cannot get the meds, the needed meds. This is why back then we needed to travel to Ukraine and get the meds, get even some proper groceries. In 2014 until 2016 or 2017, we could not get a good quality food there, and we need to go to Ukraine to buy even some, I don't know,
but
cookies,
now,
some good
now
cookies.
you're not allowed to go to Ukraine. It
Yeah.
it's become a lot more difficult, but also is the situation with meds. One other thing that I wanted to ask is like the nurses and the doctors, they're not real nurses and doctors. They're just like people who have taken courses, like some sort of medicine courses. A lot of the things that I've been hearing from people that lived in occupation is that
Hmm.
obviously everyone who could leave left. So that includes doctors, and that includes all of like professionals and people that had these
Hmm.
resources and cars and the ability, I don't know, and honestly, and the bravery to do so. So Russians started bringing in teachers and nurses and doctors to the hospitals, and they're
Yeah.
never actually nurses. Or like a nurse could be considered a doctor, and then like some random woman who was taught how to bandage people would be considered a nurse. But in reality, none of these people have proper education for their jobs, right?
Yeah. And you know the problem with um, healthcare there is huge, and unfortunately during COVID times, the death rate was much bigger there. I still had, I left in 2019 before COVID started, but my grandma still lived there. Luckily, my parents also left.
Mhm.
But she was telling me the stories how her friends were dying just because they did not have the proper life supply equipment. They just did not had that simple stuff, and the death rate was much bigger.
Mhm.
I really, every time I speak of occupation, it's really hard for me because
Yeah.
it's a tragedy for the people on occupied territories. Our lives were put on pause and then turned into some, just like, it's not a Squid Game, but it's like they
So,
were mocking us. Like
mhm.
they were mocking us, and they were making us live in some semi life. And
You're like under humans, yeah, like
yeah,
not quite fully human to them. And it's interesting, people say, oh, but then you can just move to Russia. First of all, why would you have to move to Russia to be able to, like, I don't know, buy bread. But also when you do move to Russia, while Russians say that they come here first because to save these Russians that live in Ukraine, second because of Nazis, third because of NATO, right? Like the excuse always changes, but let's
Yeah.
assume it's because the Russian speakers were oppressed, right? And they're Russian and Russia protects them. So when you have a passport that says that you're from a Russian occupied territory and you go to Moscow, you go to St. Petersburg, you go to anywhere in Russia and you try to find a job, no one gives it to you because no one
Yeah.
considers you to be an actual human. You're kind of like this waste from this
Yep.
wasteland that Russia
Yep.
occupied for its people to come and inhabit.
Yeah, exactly. And you're treated like that there too, like the local so-called government, which are, yeah, as you said, some local, um, like really low rank
Lowlights.
gangsters or
Lowlights.
really some hookers. I heard in one of the Zolkin interviews not so long ago. Oh, it was not Zolkin. It was Karpenko, his partner. He was interviewing a guy who was there in the very beginning from 2014, and he went a long way. He was in Wagner, and like back then, he witnessed a situation where the local hooker became the administration head of the city administration in one of the Donetsk Oblast cities because she was given services to FSB, and he witnessed that. He witnessed because he lived in those I don't know how to call them, but let's say barracks where there were FSB guys and him for a month, and she was given those services, and then just in a month she has become the administration head of that town.
It's
So
it's a very effed up nepotism scheme because it's not necessarily nepotism, it's a exchange of goods and services. That's I mean it's a mafia state. That's what it is.
yeah,
It's the same as in gangs. You climb up the ranks based on the favors you do, and it's really really fucked up.
yeah. You see, going back to Trump's plan, so-called plan, but obviously it's just if we look on just actions and not what he's saying, they are obviously siding with Russia right now, and given everything that Russia wants, repeating every fucking Russian narrative of their propaganda. And, you know, their so-called peace is unfortunately a Russian peace. And Russian peace is occupation, then degradation on all of those territories, at best stagnation, but usually it becomes worse. And it is also, unfortunately, the usage of human lives that are left on the occupied territories. And usage is that they just conscript them forcefully to their army, to Russian army, and they make them go and kill their former co-citizens, if I may say so, Ukrainians. And that's one of the biggest aspects of the tragedy that Russians brought to the occupied territories. They've taken too many of my comrades, and they've just put them into this meat grinder, and a huge part of the male population from Donetsk is not alive anymore because they just use them. So what Putin and Trump want to bring to Ukraine and all the territories occupied is a tragedy. And I witnessed that tragedy with my own eyes when, you know, guys, it's also in the small things. It's not only about killing us and torturing us. It's also about making our life despicable. We living in occupation, we could not move properly anywhere easily. Like, we were always stopped somewhere and checked and asked, and we needed to be really, really gentle to them, and just like, we could not have any right to speak and say, you know, what the fuck? Why the hell are you checking me? We always need to obey. You could not even have a proper dinner in a restaurant there. So once we were celebrating birthday of I don't remember if it was my father or mother, but we were sitting in a restaurant, and somewhere at 9 p.m. The music stops, lights are going on, because in the restaurant it's usually like a low lighting, it's a bit dark there, and they're stopping the music, turning on the lights, and at that hall, the people with assault rifles, they are entering, they are wearing masks, and they're telling us all to prepare our documents. They start checking our documents. If someone drunk starts saying something, I did not witness that, but they may hit you with their assault rifle, with the stock of it, and they will drag you out. You should always obey and be prepared to be checked, because that's what the fascist state is. And Russia is a fascist state. I witnessed it myself with my own eyes. You don't have the freedom to stay outside, not at home, until, like, it was, for a long time, it was 10 p.m. when the curfew started. For a few years, we were forced to go back home until 10 p.m. and stay there. If you move around, you will go to the basement. You will be, at best, interrogated there. And what, Yulia?
At best.
At best, yeah. You could not even go out to smoke on the street. My friend once went out in his slippers at winter to smoke, like, in the front of his multi-apartment building. One of the entrances, he was smoking, and police approached him, and they took him in his slippers for the night, just because he was smoking there. It was like 11 p.m., but the curfew started at 10. He was taken, it was okay, he was not beaten, but he was let out in 2 days or something. But the dude was taken just for smoking in front of his house after the curfew started. That's life in Russia. If you guys think it's peace, if you think that having a miserable life is better than being free and really fighting for your rights, then I'm sorry, but something is wrong with you, if you think so. And Ukraine, while Ukraine is resisting Russian occupation and fighting for what belongs to us, and basic human rights belong to us, we fucking deserve it. If you want to tell us that we need to give this up for people to start dying, I will unfortunately tell you that even more people will die. First of all, we won't do it because we deserve it. We deserve to be free. We deserve all our rights. And secondly, Russian occupation, it's just a pause. We fucking had it in 2014. In 15, we put it on pause, and 2022 happened in the bigger scale. Bigger invasion with mass murders, with the shots in the back. You've seen it all in Bucha. You've seen it in Mariupol. This city was destroyed, and it's not the only city that was destroyed. And you will have the same. You will have the same across the whole Ukraine. You will have the same in the European countries if you just freeze it, if you just make that ceasefire, because Russia proved to you at least 25 fucking times that no ceasefire is possible with Russia. It's just gonna continue. It's just gonna continue on a bigger scale with a bigger number of countries. So you better give us what we want, and not Putin what Putin wants, because Putin will bring all of this to your countries. I am done with this speech, I guess.
Yeah, no, I think a very good conclusion to this is that Russian peace doesn't exist. No matter how much you want the concept of Russian peace to exist, in reality, a country that can't take care or doesn't want to take care of its own citizens, right, in remote territories or in most of Russia, is not going to want peace.
for other people. We are just pawns, and it's really, really bad game. And no matter how much you dislike Ukraine, no matter how much you dislike Zelensky, no matter how many times you're going to invite Yulia Tymoshenko to the White House, the thing is, we are not under a dictator regime. We want this. We want to fight for ourselves, and we want to
Yep.
be free. This war has to be the last one, so our children don't have to fight in the next one. And so, if if you remove Zelensky and put one of the puppets in, that's what Russia came to do. We're gonna remove them. We're
Yep.
gonna fight back because we are
Yep.
not the type of people who are used to comfortable democracy. We're not the type of people who are used to kneeling. So peace for Ukraine is Russia finally getting away from us. It's not Russia getting what Russia wants and the ability to attack us again. And I think that
Yep.
that's a very good summary of why this peace on Trump's terms and on Putin's terms is not peace, it's capitulation.
Yep.
And it's
I'm optimistic here. I think Ukrainians won't even allow to put the puppet anymore. I think we won't remove it. We won't even allow it. So Trump, you can negotiate with whomever you want from
I
Ukrainian
mean,
politicians.
I know that this isn't this was a very good conclusive sentence, but I do want to say for anyone who sticks around, right, is these news from Washington where Trump doesn't understand Ukrainian politics so much that he went to talk to a corpse of a politician in the face of Tymoshenko. And yes, sure, Poroshenko maybe has a little more support than she does, but we don't
Yeah.
recycle our presidents. This is not the US. We don't have a president, then vote for a different president and then bring back the previous guy. This doesn't work that way. Even if we wanted to change Zelensky for someone, for us, it would be someone completely new. We're not
Yeah.
going to vote for either of these people. We know how shitty they are. We've had them before. This is not happening. But Tymoshenko, particularly, to me, is so funny because how absolutely unaware do you have to be of Ukrainian politics?
Yeah.
95% of Ukrainian people would passionately vote against her.
Yeah. Yeah.
We despise that woman. She's a meme. She's not. She keeps trying to climb back into politics, and everyone keeps being
Yep.
retire. Retire with grace.
Just like any previous president, she is also responsible for dismantling the Ukrainian defense.
Exactly.
Just like Poroshenko, Kuchma, Yanukovych.
They all worked with Russia. The fact that they live in Ukraine today and didn't flee to Russia is not because they love Ukraine. It's because they didn't have a good enough deal with Russia. They're not here because they love this country. We're not voting for them.
Yeah.
If you try to put Tymoshenko in power, I think Ukrainians are going to march onto the U.S. Capitol.
Oh yeah.
We're not, you know what I'm saying? We are gonna take Trump down for you.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's. Oh my God, I'm not gonna say anything.
I was actually joking, with someone yesterday at this conference that Ukrainians should just do a service thing where we just 100,000 to 200,000 of us jump in a van and we come to a country that needs help to overthrow a fascist government. We start the process. You join in, we pack up and go to a new one. Because it seems like no one knows how to do revolutions anymore. Anyway.
Yeah. I mean, I still am hopeful for the guys of Free and Brave, and I really want to see them resisting the fascist regime. So come on, guys. Be like Ukrainians. Ukrainians are fucking awesome and inspiring. Thank you, Ukrainians, for inspiring all the world and me.
Well,
Said the Ukrainian.
For having this awesome conversation with me today. I hope that, in the midst of all of this chaos and really, really upsetting talk, people will have a laugh at the last 10 minutes of it. But, I always love having you here. Thank you for
Thank you,
coming
Yulia.
over.
It's a pleasure to be here. I really hope that experience that I shared would be interesting to people. Guys, it's hard to talk about Russian occupation, and these talks bring me the slightest depression, to be honest. I remember those days and it was hard to live there. I mean, I did not realize some things back then, and it was well, it's bad, but you can live like that. No, it's not fucking life, guys. You better not accept Russian occupation. nowhere and never. So, I am still hopeful. I believe in Ukraine's victory, no matter how hard it seems these days, but we'll get there. And thank you for helping us with that. All the good people watching this, thank you for all that you do in supporting Ukraine. Thank you for your attention, your donations to any Ukrainian fundraisers. It is so important. Keep supporting Ukraine. And as I say, live long, prosper, and donate.
Thanks, Rick.
Bye.
Well, hopefully this conversation was productive and enjoyable for you, because it certainly was for me. And if you enjoyed it and would like to hear more conversations like it, please don't forget to subscribe to our channel, turn on all of your notifications, send this video to a friend, give it a like, and of course, as per usual, you already know it. Leave me your thoughts, comments, questions, suggestions, and constructive criticism down below, because I read all of it and I highly value it. Thanks.